So this is the most underrated, not talked about whitetail vocalization that I'm going to teach you how to create using my grunt tube. And I say my grunt tube in particular, my grunt tubes, I use a patented reed. The reed is 0.0075 thickness. Mass production is 0.0100. Doesn't mean a lot to many, it means a lot to me. What this means is the reeds that I use are, the reeds that I use are 25% thinner than the mass production market. The patent on that reed, there's a counterweight. There's like a cantilever of weight pressed into the end of the reed. You can whisper into the reed and get it to talk. You don't have to blow hard to get that reed to lift off of the tone board to slap back down to create that buck voice. Night and day difference. And I hate sounding like a salesman, but it works. It works, and it works great for me. And this is what I want to convey to my consumers on how to appropriately use my grunt tube. So, the most overlooked whitetail vocalization is the click. I have an Adam's apple. My wife does not. This is the anatomical difference between male and female on a vocalization. So when we talk, when we have a conversation, air is exhausting from my diaphragm through my trachea, hits my larynx, which is my voice box, and the sound comes out. When I blow through a grunt tube, I blow air from my diaphragm, the air travels through my trachea, I'm not talking anymore. The reed in the call is talking for me, so I'm just exhausting air, and then the sound comes out. Conveying this to the consumer as well, you know those grunt tubes that have that long plastic corrugated throat? So in theory, the air is traveling from the diaphragm, through a trachea, through the reed, and out another trachea. It's actually traveling in the wrong order. So those grunt tubes that have that corrugated throat, I've done seminars before. The one thing that's brought up to me is, well, you can use that corrugated throat for sound projection. You can do the same thing with cupping the ends of your hands over the barrel. That corrugated throat does absolutely nothing. Before I started building game calls, wood body game calls, I didn't know how to do it. I started dabbling years ago. I would take those plastic throats off of the end of a game call and I would discard them because to me, they were completely redundant and irrelevant. They'd get in the way and I could hear that plastic sound. So the most overlooked call for a whitetail vocalization is the click. That click in the voice. I have an Adam's apple, something I don't want to get redundant talking about, but there's a click. You can hear an audible click from any age class of buck. So my last trip to Illinois kind of fit a little bit of a puzzle piece. And I want to try to keep this, G-rated, PG-rated. I made this analogy where a buck grunt is like the F word. We can use the F word in the English language to describe pain, pleasure. We can use it as a verb. We can use it as an adjective. There's so many different ways to use the F word. So a buck grunt. A buck grunt is a grunt. And it's kind of like the F word. It can be used in so many different manners of whitetail vocalization, but it's still a grunt. So your tending grunts, your trailing grunts, your social grunts, there's still grunts, but it's the emotion that's put into it, kind of like the F word. Depending on how the grunt is used and when the grunt is used, not from you, but from the deer. That trailing or tending grunt, that's just, and you can hear that sound projection because he's moving and he's moving with a doe. Or that seeking grunt when he's just nose to the ground and looking. You'll just hear that pop in that grunt every now and then as he's moving, but you hear that sound moving throughout the woods. I hear this quite often. So one thing I really want to convey is listen to the grunt. Listen to the grunt when there's a doe present. If that buck is on a doe, behind a doe, breeding a doe, waiting and tending that doe to breed. Every now and then you'll hear this. You'll hear pops and clicks in the grunting sequence of the live animal itself. This is important because I just learned a way to take my grunt tube and communicate to other deer that I'm a buck. Now I'm communicating the fact that there is a buck with a doe with a very high probability of breeding. So the inquisition from other deer that hear the pops and the clicks, there is so much more commitment from those deer coming to your call when you start adding in the click. Most important thing, that is the most important and overlooked whitetail vocalization, is that click. So while you're doing a tending grunt or that seeking, just moving through the woods, that buck is with a doe. So any time I've had this opportunity to listen to that click in the woods coming from the live animal, there's always a doe associated with it. That's the one common denominator that deer make deer noises. They vocalize. They're a very social animal in family groups. But when you have that individual buck with a doe, the common denominator is adding the clicks into your grunting sequence is vocally communicating to other deer that there is a doe present with a high probability of breeding, and you've never even made a sound of a doe. You never had the can call, you never used a doe bleat, but you're vocalizing that you're a buck with a doe, and that guaranteed, if that buck is within audible range, it very, very highly likelihood increases the chances of commitment coming to your call. So to teach this, to actually teach how do you get your call to click, this is where it's important. So when we blow air through a game call, we exhaust air from our diaphragm, from our chest, okay? We don't want to hold our breath. Pretty much any game call, you don't want to hold your breath, you exhaust air from the diaphragm. And then you're also watching what my hands are doing. It's kind of like the lips of the deer, the mouth of the deer, from low to high. You open it up. Now the click, you say the word tick, and this is where we're going to retract everything that we said and actually hold our breath. You don't want to exhaust air from the diaphragm. Take a breath of air in, hold your breath, and you're only exhausting air that's in your mouth. And you're just saying the word tick while you hold your breath. But you're not exhausting air on the K, not on the K sound, just the T, just the T. Tongue to the roof of your mouth. What your goal is to get that tone board just to go up and slap against the tone board once. Now, bucks that I've watched with a very, very high anxiety level of breeding, that anxiety level increases, that ticking, that clicking increases. This is where you exhaust air on the tick, the T and the K. Grunting and clicking into your game call, very, very good to combine, and I guarantee you'd have a lot of luck doing that.